Hi everyone, we're going to be talking about compost this week, which is something we've worked on quite a lot in the last few years in the Cloudberry Flowers garden. We started off by just trying to make compost in the plastic domes that you can get for composting, but we were never very successful with that. It really changed when my husband Robert built us a 3-bay system down the bottom of the garden with building pallets that we'd had delivered to the house. So we've got 3 bays for composting, and then we've got a 4th bay on the end where we collect up the autumn leaves, and that creates leaf mould for us. The leaf mould does tend to take longer to break down for us. We're talking about 2 years probably before we get a good use from that for the garden. But in terms of the compost, we can usually get compost within about 8 months to a year. It's brilliant. It has worked really well. There's a few tricks to it that we need to keep on top of to ensure that we get good compost, and I'll tell you about those when we go up and see them in a minute. One of the other things that has really made a difference to me is that we started off with this brilliant compost system down the bottom of the garden, but that was great for my lower flower patches, but it was miles away from the top flower patch. So I would have to be taking wheelbarrow fulls all the way down the steps from the top flower patch, all the way down the garden, and then slogging all the way back up the hill with a wheelbarrow to go back from the compost heap. It was an awful lot of physical effort. So Robert kindly has built me another 3-bay system up at the top of the garden. So now we've got 2 working together, so we can make more compost, which is fantastic, and also there is not that physical work involved in going all the way down the bottom of the garden back up. I've found out that with flower farming, everything that I can do to make it more efficient on my body to allow me to do it on my own is a really good idea. So that has been fantastic. So let's go up to the top flower patch and we'll have a look at the compost heap and what I'm doing with it today. Hi everyone, welcome to the composting bays up at the top flower patch. So you can see here that it is built out of the pallets that Robert has put together up here. So we have got an end pallet, and then we've got another pallet here, another pallet here, and then one on the end. So 4 pallets have been used to make our composting bays. And then over here in this area is where all the initial material from the garden goes. So it's got all of our plant material from the flower patch that has been finished. It's got some grass clippings and anything else, leaves that have come off the trees, anything like that that we want to put into the compost heap. After it's had a few weeks here, it will then be turned and moved into the 2nd bay. And this is a lot lower today because this is what I've been working on. I'm digging this out so that there is room for this one to go into it. So the middle bay here is getting moved into the 3rd and final bay where it will stay. So you can just see that around there. And that's where the material is most like the compost that you would put onto your garden. So this 3-bay system works really well. It means that you have got 3 bays which are in different stages of your compost being made, and because you're turning it and moving it all the time, it allows it to break down more quickly, and you get compost within a year out of the bays, even earlier if we are on top of it and remembering to move it. I lay a piece of old carpet often on top as well, just to keep the heat in, and that helps further the decomposition and gets it going faster. There's definitely a few tricks to composting. One of the things that I am not good at and I need to be a lot better at is chopping up the material that I take out of the garden, out of the flower patches, to put on the compost heap. Robert is really good at this, and he will go in and he will chop things up and he will turn the compost heaps, and he is probably responsible for us getting really good compost. But it is really important. In order to get good compost, you need to make sure that the pieces that you're putting in the compost heap are chopped up and small enough to break down. Otherwise, you'll just end up with some really large sticks in your compost that are never going to break down. So that is definitely my tip number 1, is chop up your composting materials really small to add into it. So a few inches long at most for any branches, sticks and things. And have a good mixture in there of different materials, your brown and your green materials. So you can use all sorts of things in the compost heap. You can use leaves that have come off the trees in autumn. You can take out of your flower beds when your plants have finished flowering. So when you're cutting them back, you can then put this on the compost heap. You can put grass clippings from the garden into. We put a small amount of grass clippings in the compost heap, and we used to put a lot more in, but the composition wasn't right with the compost, and now we mulch with the tractor and it just mulches on the grass. We don't actually pick up the grass clippings when we mow anymore. So you can add food waste from the kitchen if you like. This is not something that I do because we get food waste collected and recycled locally here, but it's something you can do if you want to. You can add things like your vegetable peelings, your potato peelings, carrot peelings, eggshells. They're all really good in the compost heap too. Shredded paper you can also put in your compost heap. So lots of different materials there that you can add in to make a good mixture. My other tip would be that you can put some old carpet over the top of your compost heap, and this is something that we do, and the reason for putting this layer of old carpet on the top is to keep the heat in, and that just helps it to decompose quicker. Especially here in Scotland where the weather is not warm, it is often very cool, and it just helps just to trap that heat in and get the compost heap working for you faster. The main trick to composting is to make sure that you're chopping your pieces of garden material small enough that they decompose at a good rate, and that is not something that I've always been very good at, so I'm going to be much better this winter at cutting it down. Robert often comes in and sorts out the composting bays for me and chops them up if I haven't done it. I'm very good at pulling all things out of the flower patch and then just dumping them in the first bay, and that doesn't work. The pieces of the flower patch are too long stems, they won't break down easily, and they need chopped up. So get a good pair of secateurs and give everything a good chop. So that's what I'm going to be doing today. And I'm also going to be moving out the compost that is in the second bay and turning it and moving it into the third bay, and it's looking really good already. I would say that we get good compost within about 8 months to a year of using this 3-bay system. When you're moving your compost, you can use a fork to move it, or you can use a spade, whatever you find easiest for moving the compost and getting it to turn over. So here we go, this is bay 1. This has got the new material out of the flower patches today. This is what I have just chopped up with the secateurs and popped in the compost heap here. Bay 2, you can start to see the difference already, so that's been in there for a couple of months now and it is starting to break down nicely. And then finally we can look at bay 3. And you can see here that it's very gnarly, really good new compost for the flower patch beds. So that's me finished in the compost heap for today. I have got lots of new material out of the flower patches and I put that into the first bay and given it a chop. I have moved what was in the first bay into the second bay, so that's all turned and ready to decompose more there. And I have moved the second bay into the third bay for its final resting place where it will be ready to use within a matter of a few months. So that's great. We've got lots of great nutritious garden material to go onto our flower patches in the coming growing season. Next week we will be back in the greenhouse and in the flower patches. We'll be having a look at the dahlias, which are just hanging on in there at the end of the season, still flowering just now. We'll be having a look at those sweet peas, see if they've germinated for us, and we'll be having a look to see if any of those autumn sown seedlings need to be potted on into larger pots yet. So join me then. Last thing to do today is to put the carpet over the top of the compost heaps, and that will just keep the heat in and help it to break down that little bit faster.